And like every notable trans person that I have learned about has not lived older than 60. Like, how long am I gonna get to stay around? And if I do get to stay around long enough to get old, one day am I gonna be killed by medical neglect? Probably, yeah. I mean, like, that's often what does it for trans people. It's medical neglect. People let us die. They see that we're dying, they see that we're trans, and they let it fucking happen. Robert Eads, a trans man with ovarian cancer, doctors turned him away because he was trans, and they just let him die. Tyra Hunter was in a car accident, and the EMTs realized that she had a dig, so they let her bleed out. They let her bleed to death. The voice actress of Meowth from Pokemon, she died when she was 48 from gastroenteritis. Maddie Blaustein, her name was. I found a podcast where she talked about being afraid to go to the doctor. You know, gastroenteritis is what we call the stomach flu or a stomach bug in the US. You die from the dehydration. You die from diarrhea. That's not something that really happens very often to adults in the United States, but that's how she died. She did not go to the doctor. And I can only, from what I can gather, it was because she was scared. Because trans people get mistreated by doctors severely. That is part of our history. That is part of everyday life for us. If me or my girlfriend get in some kind of a medical emergency, if one of us are bleeding to death, is somebody gonna let us die because they don't like the genitals we have? They gonna let us die because they don't like how we're dressed? I don't know. That's something I have to think about. That's something I have to worry about. I have an advance directive. I'm 30 years old, and I have an advance directive so that things are legally squared away when I die. How old are you? Do you have one of those? Is that something that you've thought about? Hello, everybody. So today I just want to have a frank discussion about what it's like the emotional experience of being a trans person right now in 2023, because it's a whole lot, and I think having discussions like this is important. I think a lot of people don't have a grasp on how bad it is for us. You know, people are always throwing out the 40% suicide rate, attempted suicide rate in the trans population. And they, of course, a lot of transphobic people like to imagine that it's because of being trans is a mental illness. It just inherently fucks up your brain. And that's very obviously not what it's about. So, yeah, I tend to disappear a little bit from YouTube. I don't upload regularly because this shit is a lot to handle. Even if I wasn't doing YouTube, it's a fucking lot to handle. And I'm just gonna give you an idea of what that is like internally. So, the short of it is that I don't get to know about other trans people and learn about trans issues and be a part of my community without hearing about bad shit happening to people like me because they are people like me. That is specifically why bad things are happening to them. None of us can isolate ourselves from it. None of us. Yesterday, a trans woman that I know an acquaintance had a suicide scare where she posted, "Sorry, goodbye," something like that, and nothing else. And obviously everyone was really scared. And a few hours later, her sister said that she was okay, and that she's being taken care of and she's safe. And like, I don't get to go a day without hearing that something like this has happened. I don't. Last week, 3 bills in my state were approved that are going to hurt trans people. One of them is going to ban medical transition for kids, anybody under 18. It's going to be signed by the governor soon. One of the bills is going to remove trans-affirming care from being covered by Medicaid. I use Medicaid. I'm disabled. I'm on SSDI. So am I going to be able to get my testosterone? Am I going to be able to get labs done? Am I going to be able to keep my body safe and healthy? I don't know. I'm going to find out. I haven't read the bills yet because it's every day. I don't even have the space to get the information that I need because I'm going to get so overwhelmed and so angry and so scared. I'm really angry and really scared every day. I want to give you a description of dysphoria because I think a lot of people don't really understand how incredibly traumatic it is to go through. Not every trans person has dysphoria, and that's something that I want to make clear, but I'm one of the trans people who had incredibly severe dysphoria, and it's still something that I occasionally deal with. But I was about 12 years old. And this description, I actually read a cis person write this on Reddit, and I thought it was so perfect, and it stuck with me. They say it's body horror. It's like some kind of eldritch, just like unknowable, intolerable event. And it happens to you when you're a goddamn little kid. When I was 12. So it's like this. You start middle school. Life's okay, maybe not perfect. That you have some discomfort maybe with some things, but it's not bad. And one day, you start growing a whole bunch of fur on your paws. Or you grow paws, and they're covered in fur. You get little pads on your hands. Your snout starts to get long. You get a little wet nose, and you're turning into a fucking dog. And you're like, this isn't right. This isn't okay. This is really fucking scary. Every day, just a little bit more, your body changes. And you're helpless, and you're a child. And if you ask someone for help, if you tell someone that you're scared about what's happening to your body, they say, it's natural. It's supposed to be this way. And they give you a dog collar. They buy you a leash. They say you're supposed to like it. They say, well, some people just don't like it at first, but they get used to it. Nobody likes it at first, but they get used to it. And they tell you you're a dog now. And they start feeding you dog food. And your body is changed forever. So with this context that I've given you of what going through puberty is like as a dysphoric trans person, having your body permanently misshapen and being told that you're a dog now instead of the human being that you knew that you were. Imagine now Some people think, why is misgendering such a big deal? Why is it such a big deal? Why do they get so upset? Because my body was fucking destroyed by this event when I was a child, and you're telling me it was right. You're telling me that I'm not who I say I am with a single pronoun or a single name. It might seem like a small mistake to you. It's incredibly not okay. I'm actually tired of pretending that misgendering isn't a big deal. I'm actually really fucking tired of acting like it's not a big deal. But if I lose my shit, if I lose my cool about it, I'll be the trans girl who was at the GameStop that one time. We have to act cool about fucking everything. That's what it's like to be a minority in general, actually. We're not allowed to be angry after all of the mistreatment that we're dealing with. We're not fucking allowed. It is really hard to survive in a body that's been changed in that way. It can be really hard. I'm somebody who has attempted suicide before, and when I did, it really had very little to do with my gender. That was not at the forefront of my mind when I attempted suicide, but the dysphoria was always like a hum in the background that added to everything. When I attempted suicide, one of the things that pushed me there was that I had had an abortion when I was 19, and I was completely at peace with that. That was one of the best decisions, of course, that I've made in my entire life. It was necessary. It was important. And there was never a moment where I questioned that decision. But I was raised Catholic, and I thought everyone would hate me if they found out about it. I was surrounded by a whole lot of conservatives. I was surrounded by people saying that people who had abortions were sick and murderers, and the social stigma really, really hurt. It hurt a lot. It was just the idea that everyone seemed to think that people like me who did something to my body for my survival and my well-being and for my future, that they thought I was a monster and a bad person and that I shouldn't fucking be here. They didn't want people like me to exist. And then, a few weeks before I attempted suicide, there was a shooting at a Planned Parenthood in Colorado where some lunatic Christian thought, if I kill some of these terrible abortion providers, kill some of these people who are getting abortions too, like, that'll show them I'm doing the righteous thing. And, it really sent the message that nobody fucking wants me here. This world doesn't want me in it. I didn't even know I was trans at the time. I'm honestly thankful that I didn't figure out that I was trans until I was like 25, 26. Because just having the knowledge that a whole lot of people think you're a fucking abomination, it's very hard. It's very hard to live with that. It is very hard to live with that. And, it's not just the emotional experience of people seeing you that way. Because that is part of it, but the way that people see you, that bigotry, affects you materially. And it affects people like you materially. My girlfriend is trans. My mother-in-law is trans. A whole lot of my best goddamn friends are trans. And I, every day, am hearing about the consequences of not just me living in a world that doesn't want me in it, but a world that doesn't want anybody who I care about to be here either. I know a 14-year-old trans boy who lives in my state. And he's an incredible artist. And he is really sweet. And he's just the coolest little fucking dude. And, like, man, I feel really guilty that I can't really do anything to help him, you know? And it's becoming progressively more and more unsafe here in my state for people like me. And, like, he can't leave the state. Most of us can't leave. Like, I just feel so helpless, you know? I just feel like I should be doing something to stop this from happening, and there's nothing. All I can do, the only thing I can do, is try to get enough money to leave and abandon everybody here to keep myself and my girlfriend safe. And, like, even that's hard. Like, it's hard because we're fucking broke. Everybody's fucking broke. You know, if it was just the dysphoria, if transphobia didn't exist and it was just the dysphoria, I think it would be reasonable for a lot of people to understand why that experience would make some people, lead some people to take their own lives. And I wanted to say, by the way, just to make it, like, super clear, I'm safe. I'm in zero danger of suicide. I have an extremely good therapist. I've made a whole lot of progress with my mental health. I am very overwhelmed with fear and anger and guilt and hopelessness. I do feel that way. But I am safe. I haven't self-harmed in half a decade. The last time I've been hospitalized, I've been involuntarily hospitalized 2 times in my life, and the last time I was hospitalized was a little bit before I started testosterone. Because just being able to change my body into the way that it was supposed to look has done so much for me. It's done so much. You know, it's just for a trans person in Missouri, I'm probably doing emotionally better than most, which is awful. It shouldn't be this way. If I'm not in the crosshairs, if it's not me that the gun is being pointed at right now, it's other trans people I know. Something bad is always fucking happening to other trans people that I know. One of my best friends has recently realized that, like, they're almost certainly trans and that they want to start transitioning, but they also told me that they think that their dad might murder them if he finds out. Every trans person that I know is unsafe and being treated terribly in one way or another. Sometimes it's legally, sometimes it's interpersonally, sometimes it's employment discrimination, sometimes it's getting treated incredibly badly by a medical system. It's not acceptable. It's not fucking acceptable. And like every notable trans person that I have learned about has not lived older than 60. Like, how long am I gonna get to stay around? And if I do get to stay around long enough to get old, one day am I gonna be killed by medical neglect? Probably, yeah. I mean, like, that's often what does it for trans people. It's medical neglect. People let us die. They see that we're dying, they see that we're trans, and they let it fucking happen. Robert Eads, a trans man with ovarian cancer, doctors turned him away because he was trans, and they just let him die. Tyra Hunter was in a car accident, and the EMTs realized that she had a dig, so they let her bleed out. They let her bleed to death. The voice actress of Meowth from Pokemon, she died when she was 48 from gastroenteritis. Maddie Blaustein, her name was. I found a podcast where she talked about being afraid to go to the doctor. You know, gastroenteritis is what we call the stomach flu or a stomach bug in the US. You die from the dehydration. You die from diarrhea. That's not something that really happens very often to adults in the United States, but that's how she died. She did not go to the doctor. And I can only, from what I can gather, it was because she was scared. Because trans people get mistreated by doctors severely. That is part of our history. That is part of everyday life for us. If me or my girlfriend get in some kind of a medical emergency, if one of us are bleeding to death, is somebody gonna let us die because they don't like the genitals we have? They gonna let us die because they don't like how we're dressed? I don't know. That's something I have to think about. That's something I have to worry about. I have an advance directive. I'm 30 years old, and I have an advance directive so that things are legally squared away when I die. How old are you? Do you have one of those? Is that something that you've thought about? You've probably heard the name Brandon Teena from... He was in the movie called Boys Don't Cry. The movie was about him and his death. I haven't watched the movie. I don't think I'm going to watch the movie, but he was a young trans man, I think in his early 20s, and he was raped and murdered. Actually, he was raped. He got away and reported the rape and said that he was not safe. He told the police he wasn't safe. And the police harassed him, made fun of him for being trans. Then the same people who raped him murdered him later. And his tombstone has his dead name on it. It has a girl's name on it instead of his name. They probably put him in a fucking dress, too. And that's not gonna happen to me because I have an advance directive. And I encourage all of you guys to please do that as well. I just don't want to see that happen to anybody anymore. We do sometimes die earlier than cis people. And if you're not married, if your next of kin is your fucking transphobic parents, you need to make an advance directive. Because I don't want to see that happen to my friends. Like I've said, I'm probably doing better than a whole lot of other trans people, but I still feel like this. And there was a poem that I found by Bertolt Brecht that resonated with me, and I'm just going to tell you a small part of it. They tell me, eat and drink, be glad you have it. But how can I eat and drink when my food is snatched from the hungry, and my glass of water belongs to the thirsty? Yet I eat and drink. And of course, this is a Marxist who wrote this, and so in the more literal reading, it's more about exploitation and colonization, but it applies here for me as well, that I just feel a lot of guilt. You know, I have a place to live, and I have food to eat, and I'm supposed to be glad that I have my testosterone. Even though it might be precarious, and it is precarious, I've had my hysterectomy. I've had my top surgery. I have a wardrobe full of men's clothing. I have my driver's license, my social security card, my passport, all of these things updated appropriately with my name on them. I have these things. And most trans people don't have these things. And I'm just supposed to be okay with that. Like, I have the bare minimum that every trans person should have. And I'm still not safe. That's the fucking reality. So I'm still not safe with all this. Something that I'm really worried about right now while making this video is I don't want to make other trans people feel more hopeless than they already do. But, you know, I think most of us are already painfully aware of how things are. And, you know, something that I told a trans person online not too long ago is that the people who are doing this to us, they make us bleed, they kill us, and then they don't have to deal with the bodies. They don't have to deal with the blood and the tears. That's something that my community swims in and sweeps up. I think there's this idea of they're trying to hurt me, so I don't want them to see that I'm hurt. I do want them to see. I do want them to see what they're doing to human beings. They should know. They should have to deal with it.